Zoom recording. All right. Title in real quick. Get it. Full education. Okay. And let's see. It's working on it. We are live. Yay! Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. I when I think about coming onto these Zooms, I'm like, I think I should sing kindergarten good morning songs, like carpet time.
We should have a song.
Usually when Ted comes on, he's playing some kind of hard rock or something.
Yeah, like Metallica. But we're all missing carpet time and the cute little ones. Not that you can't use heavy metal for your carpet time. You do you. Your kids
I was talking to Seth about how we're doing this. We're doing some of these direct services. I don't really know what we're calling them, but I was like, I just really miss working with kids. I was like, for someone who spent the past 6 years basically working maybe 11 months out of the year with children, and now I'm almost going
weird
months. February. Think about it that way. Mid-February is when we stopped working with kids.
It feels like a long time. Yeah. And it is nice to see kids over Zoom. It's awesome. It's better than not. But I do actually miss
just hanging.
Yeah.
Hanging with kids.
We're going to be tired when we go back for sure.
Oh my gosh.
We're going to be so tired.
It's going to be first year teaching all over again.
Yeah, that first week is really month probably is going to be.
Gosh, I remember my first year of teaching, I would get home and I remember passing out by 5. There were some days I didn't even eat because I was just too tired.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
What's
you see your bed and you get in it.
Yes.
Might shower. That's important.
I could do it in the morning maybe. It was
special education peeps probably. The shower you might just stand there, but but
I think
doesn't always happen.
When everything figures out, it's definitely going to be
different.
And I'm going to be exhausted, but in a good way. I'm ready.
Yeah, in a joyful way. There's lots of coffee, lots of caffeine. We'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get started in just a minute, guys. Sorry we're running a little late this morning. We're waiting on a couple peeps, but we're talking about sensory and behavior today. And so a lot of us have sensory items in our classrooms, and we're just going to kind of talk about what that means and how we use them and whatnot. And please give us comments on our page.
I'm going to keep it open.
Awesome.
So that I can see if any comments.
Perfect.
So while we wait for some friends, everyone else can listen to our banter.
Yeah.
I learned this past weekend, I turned the big 2-9, and I learned that I have a high reactivity to kale and cucumbers.
Interesting. Oh, so when I was reacting to a bunch of stuff, one of my doctors said it could be oxalates. Am I saying that right? Don't judge me, internet. I don't know. But it's in a lot of green vegetables and some, I think. And so maybe you've got something like that going on.
But the worst part was I have a moderate sensitivity. And I'm not allergic, so this is good.
Yep.
Moderate sensitivity to tea.
Oh, yeah. So I did
I listen to this? No.
I'm telling you, I took tea out of my diet for a couple of years almost, here and there, but for the mainly because I was having such a reaction. But now I can drink some. I'm probably going too hard and I'll eventually have to stop again. But food sensitivities.
Well, and I think, with the recent face issue, if anyone was wondering, that's why I wasn't here. It's not to be vain out there. I just looked like a very red cherry everywhere. No, I was like, this is necessary more than ever. I need to figure this stuff out because my body is attacking me in all forms and fashions.
Well, no, it's stressful. It's definitely stressful. I've been there. Oh, Ted's here. Let me promote him.
Woohoo, Ted.
Yeah. Hopefully
just-
Cooper, I think Cooper got like a fresh new haircut. So
No, I just
Hey,
drop
Ben.
off time is between
Oh, you
9
dropped him off.
on Tuesdays. So
Gotcha.
Ah,
the days we do this. And so, yeah.
Do what you got to do. We're fun. Cooper's got to look good. Yeah.
We're talking sensory stuff and we don't have Terry?
I
She's on the
know.
way.
Okay,
She's
good.
on the way. Yeah.
So we were just talking about the sensitivities I have that I found out this past
great.
weekend.
Yeah.
Gotta love food sensitivities.
Yeah,
Look at that.
cucumbers and kale. And the really sad part was
Oh.
like I literally drank the day before or the day of, I was like drinking cucumber like water.
Sure. Yeah.
And then when I got the email, it said I had a sense moderate to cauliflower, and I literally ate an entire bag of cauliflower puffs. Like, and I was like, oh no.
I would be careful with did you get the like prick test or the blood test?
Blood.
Okay. I did like the prickly back test, and I mean, honestly, they didn't know what to tell me because I was intolerant to so many things. I mean,
Everything.
so many things. They're like, we just suggest targeting a couple things at a time. Like, I was like,
There's no
so-
hope for you.
I ate sweet potatoes every day for like a month. I was like, I'm not okay. Terry's here.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
Seth
Now
brought-
that the real sensory
Very
pro
fair.
is here, we can, yeah. Sorry, world.
hello.
Hey, Terry.
Can you hear us, Terry?
We think you're muted.
Unmute yourself, Terry.
We need to hear you. Oh, you're not muted. Uh-oh.
Nothing worse than not being muted.
Another good t-shirt.
Ted, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Your name Theodore. Were you
Yeah.
named after somebody in your family?
No.
No? Okay.
Well, let's shut down that conversation.
I'm like wondering, like, I mean, there aren't a lot of Theodores out there anymore. And I was like,
Well,
is that a family name?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
And
Neither
maybe-
was I.
There you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my Mac detected something unusual and made me re-sign everything in because
Oh.
this Zoom thing was suspect.
Oh, I got you.
Oh.
Because Chad's not here.
That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, Zoom was like, wait, what?
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe he is, and that was his sign. I'm not sure.
Maybe. Somewhere.
Still gonna mess with you, even if I'm halfway across the country.
Yeah, he's on his phone just
No,
laughing.
he is on his phone. He's right now saying, hi, friends.
No.
Should we tell him go away? Bye.
Yeah, I mean, you can watch this later. It's recording.
Yes.
Yeah. So Chad is on vacation,
Mhm.
if you're wondering.
Chad promised he'd relax.
That's right. I think it's hard for him because he's so passionate about all this stuff, which is
He
great.
is.
But we all need some.
And I
art.
think this week's topic like really hits home for him.
Yeah, I think he's feeling a little intense
Be
about
very relative for him.
it. Yes.
Well, I guess we should just get started. Katie, take it away. What are we talking about today?
All right, so we're talking about sensory and behavior. And so I think that, just like I said earlier, a lot of us have, as teachers, have had a lot of sensory items in our room, or we even get into a classroom, like a new classroom, and there's all kinds of fun sensory things, and there's sensory buckets, and it's all over Pinterest, and we see all these cool sensory things. But as we've learned from Terry,
Mm.
there needs
Okay,
to
I'm
be
gonna
data.
I'm going
Well,
to complain.
literally, let's just clarify.
Ugh.
As I learned from the BCBAs about the appropriate use of sensory, I have changed dramatically. But I
It's
was
all
not,
about
I was not the
effort.
first one. You guys were the first.
Well, and even before you introduce any sensory things into your classroom's already full of sensory things.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Right. How we experience our world, believe it or not, is through our senses.
Yes.
Proprioception and interoception. Terry knows all about those.
She
Well,
knows
I
all the cool words.
I just love
That's
to
how
hear
we
you talk
experience
about
our
that.
world. That's how we interact with our world. So it's kind of all sensory when you think about it.
Mhm. And I think for like any of the teachers out there, I'm completely comfortable saying I'm guilty of it. Hopefully that makes you feel better. we aren't here to judge by any means. We're just here to put a new perspective on it and to maybe have you think twice about what you're introducing into your classroom and why you're introducing it. I know I felt like when I was introduced into a classroom that basically I was said, what do you need? And I was like, okay, I need standing desks. I need wiggles. I need this and this. And I just went like, I got really excited. And it was like within the first 9 weeks, I was like, and we no longer are going to use these standing desks because they're not necessary. And we're not going to have this in the classroom anymore because it's not necessary either. And I just think it's really important for us to think, for you guys just to kind of think about what we're saying. Don't feel like you have to just get rid of everything, but really think about what you have in your classroom and what's the purpose for it. Yes, Ted.
And think about whether you actually need to add things too.
Mm.
Think twice about that. Now, so Kate, when you said I need standing desks and I need this and I need that, had you even met your students yet?
No, and I think I just want standing down.
Well, as good behavior analysts, we want to do an assessment first, right?
That's right.
Yes.
We do want to be prepared, and we do want to prepare based on what we know about the person, but we also want to actually meet the person and assess. So I get it. When you have 20 people you're meeting all at once, it's a little bit different. So you're acting a little proactively. But on what basis did you determine you needed a standing desk and the fidgets and everything else?
Based on the fact that I saw, like, I just saw OT and I was like, okay, we need something. Okay, let's try it out.
It was nothing about your students. It was that there was an OT available?
No, that like some of the children had like OT, like they had OT services. And it was just me being like,
Trying to be proactive.
Yeah, trying to be proactive, trying to be a novice teacher in that sense. And I was just like, and I quickly realized that I was like, oh my gosh, these standing desks are more of a distraction than anything. And the one thing that what really turned me was so I had one of those de-escalation centers. I had it.
I want it for my house.
Calm corners.
Calm corners. And I tried to make sure that there wasn't a lot in there, but that was actually the reason for escape behavior.
Yeah.
I gave them 5 opportunities to access this space, and each little thing represented 3 minutes. My students quickly realized, 3 + 3 + 3 + 3
There you go.
equals 15 minutes. Oh, Miss Hazelwood, it's Independence Station. I'm going to go to the calm corner now for 15. I'm just going to use them all right now. And I was just like, they really rigged the system. Like,
You rigged the system.
Yes, you set it up and they figured it out.
No, I set it up and I was just like, no, we are not doing this anymore. So lessons learned when people came and talked to me about calm corners later, I said, these are the pros and cons, and I'm really seeing a lot of cons personally. So
Well, and go ahead, Kate.
Go ahead, Terry. Okay.
Well, I was just going to say that, Kate, you had mentioned the word necessary. You said that word several times. And I think that really is for teachers. They don't want to not have something that might be necessary. And then unfortunately, then they may inadvertently bring things into the classroom that is more disorganizing. And honestly, from a sensory standpoint, the things that I see now that with all good intentions, it is creating a more disorganized state for someone's sensory system. And again, if there's no data initially, both in target behaviors, but also just how they use sensory, because like Ted said, we're all sensory beings. So that's not like a new concept, but we're also different at home. We might be different in an outpatient clinic. We had a student that mom was talking about how he acted at home and in this other private autism center, and he was also in public school. And, we were just thinking she had no idea what she was talking about. And because he was a great kid with us and we never saw any behavior. And then the speech therapist that worked in the other facility came and worked in public school and met him. And she said, this is not the same child. And we had a meeting, and he kind of did that thing where the code switching, because he was a totally different person there, but that was true there. and he was a totally different person in our school with a very structured setting. And that was also true. You know what I mean? So it is important to get the biggest picture too when you're gathering information.
So is the code switching also known as behavior contrast? And
Oh, I'd have to ask.
Not quite.
I don't
Okay.
know.
Had there, what Terry's describing is just one person behaving differently under different circumstances.
Right.
Mhm.
You know, and you know what this organism learned is you do this over here and you
Yes.
do this over here.
Yes.
Well, one element of that environment came over here. It wasn't as though an evil spirit jumped into him and possessed him. Nay,
Exactly right.
it was just that part of that environment bled over into this environment and is evoking the behavior that you typically get in that environment.
That's right. And that's
Yeah.
what he's observing in that environment.
Yeah.
He, he was really accommodating to the place he was in and the expectations, because the expectations were super high with us.
I had experience with that too, where the parents were describing to me, they're like, this is what I'm experiencing at home. And I say to them, I'm like, but I'm not seeing that. And they're like, well, they need this. They need to have this.
Right.
We have it at home. They need to have it here. And I'm just like, but I don't see it here. So what does a teacher do?
Well, one thing I like to ask is, and this comes from good old John Bailey, can you show me that? Show me how you do that. Let me see that. And if they can't get it to happen, then get it on video for me.
Right.
You know,
That's what we
video.
say. Mhm.
And,
Okay.
and don't just start the video when the problem's already happening.
Mhm.
Start the video when you think it's about to happen. So I can see what leads up to it,
Mhm.
and I can see the whole thing, and I can see what happens afterwards. So it's going to be a long video maybe, but
Yeah.
I don't care. I have time. I'll watch it.
Right.
And Terry made a
Get
good
that
point.
information. There's so much there.
Yeah, and Terry made a good point earlier about teachers having good intentions and putting all these things in their room. Because a lot of times, especially if you're a new teacher, and it's happened to me, you know, I'm in there over the summer, I'm trying to get my room all perfect and cute, but like, you know, not overly cute because it was a special education room and you don't want to put a ton of stuff in there. But, you know, you're handed these massive, like, you know, what are they,
Binders.
catalogs? Yeah, like
Oh.
binders, and binders.
And binders.
Tons of binders, but like these huge catalogs full of like hokey stools and bean bags and cute, like cool shaped tables and
And then there's the Oriental Trading Company catalog. And the weird thing is, if you say Oriental, it's racist unless it's on the cover of that
That
catalog.
is
And then it's
true.
not.
right,
Well,
yeah,
that's where you buy,
Then it's
that's where you
gold.
buy the koosh balls and the stickers and everything else that,
yep,
you know, every child with
True.
special ed needs those things, right?
right.
No,
And so
no,
a lot of new
Kind
teachers
of
don't.
internalizing for a lot of them, but we
Yeah,
think
Yeah.
So they're you know, but you get this chance twice a year, maybe some school divisions once a year,
Yep.
maybe, you know, depending on your division and the funding, which is a whole other thing. But
No, Katie, you're spot
You're-
on.
you're
They're
stressed.
like,
You're
you
just I'm gonna spend this money now. I'm gonna buy these cool things that I think I might need,
Right.
because you're afraid you won't be able to access what you need later.
Well, and the IEP probably has some phrase in
Right.
the accommodation section that says,
Yeah, that's a good.
access to sensory, blah, blah, blah. You know, and again, I'm guilty, and I've been on a journey for 35 years, you know, to become better all the time and to do whatever is the actual best for the students. And I think that's the part too, that if we allow teachers to come on the journey, because I was one of the people that didn't understand and worked with a group of people that were very open and growth mindset and allowed me to come along and ask all the questions and take data and just talk it through. And when you see it works and the child is more successful, they're all in. I haven't seen anyone who has not been, but it's not instantaneous. And it is a journey. And most teachers in special ed, they have this kind of like piece where they still want to solve the mystery and find out what makes people tick and all of that.
Yeah.
And this is part of it. And you just draw them in. And it was slow for me. I was not a fast learner, as some of you may know.
well, and,
But now I'm all in.
yeah, and we're all on that journey.
Yes.
You know, I started doing what I'm doing 36 years ago.
He has a year on me.
still
I'm
believe it or
35.
not, I'm still, and I'm still learning stuff. The thing is though, and teachers want to be on that journey too, and they are.
They
The thing
do.
is, teachers have a teacher's job to do,
They do.
and teachers have 10 trillion things to do. And while they have their continuing ed, we have our continuing ed, but ours is a little bit different because we actually get time for it.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers
Right.
don't necessarily get time for it. And so they do it when they can, but they kind of also need to rely on knowledgeable, skeptical, critically thinking, helpers like you and me and Kate and Katie to provide reasonable guidance. And because of that, a lot of people, not just teachers, but OTs, behavior analysts, a lot of people are susceptible to nonsense sometimes, to fads and frauds,
Sure.
Right.
even in the sensory world. And that's why I keep recommending this book. I make no money off of it. It's not my book. Controversial Therapies for Autism and Intellectual Disabilities. Get the second edition because they spell disabilities correctly on the cover of this one. They misspelled it.
Oh no.
It happens.
Things
Just
happen.
a little proofreading
human.
there. But
Wow, the cover.
you know that there's a lot of nonsense out there. I know that
That's
there's
right.
a lot of nonsense out there.
I mean,
And-
there's a sensory section at Target now, right? I mean, like it's a
Oh.
whole thing. Like
Weighted,
it's a,
weighted blankets for everyone.
Oh.
Yep.
Target has like 3 different weighted blankets to choose from.
right.
And-
I saw a vibrating weighted heating pad advertised on
Oh,
television
my
this morning
goodness.
while I was having my coffee. I want one. Because I want a whole body one because that would be so nice.
It sounds nice.
And then
Well,
it's cooling too for those days when it's too hot.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, because we're sensory, right? Sensory good.
So we mentioned IEPs and accommodations, modifications. So Terry, what are some of the things you see the most, like sensory items, the most integrated into those specifications and IEPs, misused in classrooms?
Okay. Phew.
I like that clarification was good.
Yeah. The ones that you see misused or, and again, the intentions are good, right?
Always.
Of course. But what are some of the things you see the most that are
So,
just kind
so
of,
I think
sorry.
my favorite thing in the whole world was a hokey stool, which is that little hourglass kind of thing.
Yeah,
that you sit
they
on.
look
It
cool.
was-
They're fun.
And I'm a sensory seeker, to use my OT sensory term. But when I'm sitting on it, I am much more productive in everything I do. I also stand. I stand to eat. I stand to type. All of that. I am more productive. And again, not based on data. I really did assume that a lot of these kids then would have that same response.
Right.
So the thing I learned is when I introduced one into a class, I would say, you have one chance. If you fall off, you can fall off one time. The next time it gets removed. Guess
Right.
how many times every child fell off? One time.
Exactly.
Sure.
Exactly.
And then they're
one.
gone. Yeah.
Exactly. And then I went, and I said, now if you ever fall off, it's gone. They did not fall off. However, they were not more productive. And so we ended up really shifting everything to what does it look like to work? And again, I had some excellent behavior analysts working with me who understood how to teach a child to sit and work. The problem was never the sensory piece, ever. But the narrative right now, or the narrative has been, I think it's shifting. Parents are inundated from all areas. And it's also a big business to sell all this stuff. So, and I bought into it. There are people in Virginia still that have great press and people come out to see them and they're really pushing the items. So I think that the seating, the flexible seating piece is the piece that I'm seeing right now as the biggest distraction. And it's really a barrier and impeding people from working. Ted.
Well, and too bad there's not like a 30-day, free trial.
Right?
It would
That
be
would
great
be
to
nice.
get and get the data. And if it works,
They're
Yes.
expensive.
if
Yeah.
it's producing a change, keep it. If it's not, send it back.
Mhm.
And I was going to say something really smart, and now I
Uh-oh.
forgot what it is. But it'll come back at
Well-
Okay.
an appropriate time.
I like the 30-day thing because that's what OTs can do.
Well,
Because we can bring it into the classroom and say, you got 30 days to show the data, and if not, it leaves.
Yeah.
Right.
well, and I remembered now. And I'm really glad that what y'all ended up doing was teaching these kids how to sit and work.
Right.
Because people need to be able to sit in a restaurant. They need to be able to sit in a movie theater. They need to be able to sit in a lot of places. And unless a person is able to sit and participate in the manner that it's typical to participate, they're going to be excluded from all of that, or have to go to those once a week, sensory movies, which is okay, which is great. If your area has them where you live, where the lights are on and it's okay to make noise and everything, it's wonderful if that's where your learner is or where you are as an adult. And it's also wonderful to be able to learn how to be okay and enjoy the movie in a darkened theater and be there and be quiet and watch it, because then that gives you more opportunities, not just that
Right.
one on Saturday afternoon.
Right.
Right.
It's our job to
Or
make sure that things are functional. Like we're teaching them in the accommodations, the modifications, like is that to help that child be more functional and more independent? And that's because that's our goal. So
Now, there's a lot of real life sensory stuff, and I'm sorry, Terry, I don't mean to hijack it, but sensory is
no,
an
I love to
important
listen
real
to you.
life thing. I used to make a living teaching people how to eat, which, I'm fat, so I'm good at it,
You
right?
were very successful.
Well, thank you.
I'm teasing.
But, I published right now a long time ago. But there's texture sensitivity, there's taste sensitivity or selectivity, taste selectivity, thickness selectivity, the viscosity. And these are for kids who, if Terry did her evaluation and Lauren, who's a speech pathologist, did her swallowing evaluation, either Terry or Lauren could do the swallowing, the video esophagram with, the right equipment and other people. You may find that everything's there, but the kid is not accepting this texture.
Right.
Well, some say that it's a sensory issue, and they're right, because they're not accepting that. And if it's impeding their life because they're 14 and in regular high school and they're eating baby food, that's impeding their life. But it's also a behavioral thing. And just like you teach kids to sit down, we can teach kids to eat and enjoy other textures and drink liquids of other thicknesses if they have the right musculature, because I'll tell you, thickened coffee is really awful. But there's that. There's sensitivity to sounds. There is such a thing as hyperacusis. Some people have just really, really adverse reactions to particular sounds. And then there are some people who can hear ranges that most people can't. There actually are super tasters. There's a song by They Might Be Giants called Generally Super Taster, but there are super tasters. So where we may have one taste bud, they may have 100 taste buds. So yeah,
That's very cool.
awesome.
Hey, you were talking about cucumber sensitivity.
Yeah.
They bite into a really bold cucumber or a really, really, really spicy pear. There's no such thing for 99% of us, but for some people there's. And then some people have texture sensitivities. It's all real. And it's all in how we work with it. And do we, sometimes, I'm sure Terry you'll agree, and I'm going to say one more thing and then I'll shut up because I've been monopolizing. Sometimes we accommodate and sometimes we teach the person out of it, or we help the person become less averse to that.
Yes.
Because sometimes the right thing to do is accommodate, but sometimes to help that person open that person's world, you do need to help the person to actually enjoy it and have a less adverse reaction. And I'll be quiet because you know how to do it.
I just have to give you an example just to affirm everything you said is 100% right. Again, I won't say that again. I'll point out the next time anything I disagree with. But we had a student who did have autism, appeared to be very hypersensitive to all things, whose dad was in the major leagues. And in school, he had to have, the earphones, all kinds of accommodations or modifications. But he really wanted to go to the major league ball field to see his dad. And that motivation allowed him to be able to do that. He could go all the time because the value of his dad was higher than the other. And he literally learned to not pay attention to those other things that were real. It's not that they weren't real, but then they were put in a place because the function for him was that family piece and being there with his dad. So again, I think sometimes we're not really saying sensory doesn't exist. It's what Ted said in the beginning. It does, but it's where does that component fit? And is that the source of, is that just because it's impeding something or it's something we're observing, it doesn't mean it's the source. And even if it's a source, that doesn't mean that then we provide more sensory to ameliorate it. I've just seen a cognitive approach and teaching and shaping make the biggest change in every student. And I just did things wrong for years.
Terry, what about just if something is aversive, like if I put on anything wool, and it touches my skin, is it appropriate for me to have a tantrum, fall on the floor, scream, kick, and cry? Or do we need to appropriately teach, I don't like this, how do, I can remove it. If I can't remove it independently, how do I seek out
Yeah. Well, and I
help.
guess I think it's
You know what I
that's that
mean?
verbal operant behavior to request.
Yeah,
You
but
know
I
what I
think,
mean? Truly, and to know that that's going to be respected.
but we're so quick. To just do it for them,
You're
right?
right.
Sure, and
Yes.
especially with headphones. Like headphones
Yeah.
run a lot of my kids' IEPs. Like
Yeah.
you know, you get a classroom in special education and you have this like bucket of headphones, and it's awesome, and a lot of kids need it, especially at first. But can you teach your kids to slowly be okay with that fire drill? Can you
Right.
practice? Can you prime? Can you, like you said, shaping? Like we can,
Mhm.
for a lot of kids, we can take that piece out. It's
Yes.
these accommodations and these additions, these sensory things can, for a lot of kids, be faded out, and that's important
Yes.
because. And you'll see, I've seen a lot of teachers carry around the headphones, and I was one of them. I had them on my pocket with me at all times, like waiting. But because of our kind of caretaker attitudes, because we're teachers and we're educators and we're therapists, but like, you know, you see your kid amping up, like, do you want your headphones? We should get them to ask, like,
And they
Kate
have to request.
appropriately request them, or and to fade it out, and we're not just giving it to them and they just always have it and they're not learning, oh, maybe I'm actually okay.
So,
Right.
Katie, you carried headphones around with you, but you didn't carry a standing desk around with you.
Right, I did not do that.
Why?
I could have
It's amazing how
lugging it around.
kind of coincide with what's convenient to carry around. But
Right.
no, you're absolutely right. You know what a lot of the stuff, if it's good, if it's okay, if it's right, if it's not going to limit the person's life, or if the aversion is so strong, we do things that are sometimes intermediate steps, like the headphones.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important for as many people as we can to have that really be an intermediate step and help other people not need that forever. Because what happens if you leave the headphones at the hotel when you're at the beach?
Right.
Right.
And I've done a whole lot of stimulus fading, stimulus masking to get people to not only eat but enjoy different textures of food, different flavors, new food groups, but also getting people to be accepting of and actually kind of not just tolerate but sometimes enjoy particular sounds. The big sounds, no one enjoys a crying baby. I've worked with people who are very averse to crying babies. I've worked with people very averse to lawnmowers, and it really stinks.
True,
when you're
lawnmowers.
homeschooled and the homeowners association mows the lawn same day every week, and that's when you have to be in class. There are just certain sounds we need to become. We don't have to enjoy them, but we have to be able to tolerate them for a reasonable period of time. Not forever. I don't want a crying baby for an hour. I don't want a crying baby for a minute. But, yeah, so I'll be quiet now.
No, I just think I think it's important for us to, I got a lot of pushback about the headphones that you talk about it. And I'm just like, but the headphones aren't going to be there all the time. I was like, if there's a real, like fire drills, like it's a drill to plan for the unexpected. And I was just like I honestly did push back, Ted. You would have been proud in those IEP meetings, because I was just like, they can't, like, I'm not going to have this child, we're halfway down the stairs and they're like, oh no, I forgot my headphones. I have to go back into the burning. No.
Because is that functional?
That's not functional by any means. And so it's just like,
we're taking their independence away by not teaching them how to.
And so it's like you were saying that, that fading, that stimulus fading, I just think it's important for us to remember it's like those, and I think of it like the PEC system, right? With the PEC books or any augmented devices. The end goal is like, if that child needs that, I'm not dismissing that at all, but it's their responsibility to get it. Correct? Am I correct on this?
Yeah.
At least to have access, right?
Yes.
Right.
And so like, if we're the ones if the teachers or the adults are the ones that are constantly carrying the headphones on their pocket, or the wig, the fun little things are in mom's purse, and like, the kids amping up and they're like, oh, here you go. Here are all these cool fidgets. It's like, cool fidgets. Like something to think about.
Right.
Yeah, but, and two things. One, that kind of, again, that speaks to why we behavior analysts and OTs and speech pathologists and everyone who consults in classrooms and gives guidance and advice and stuff to teachers who are incredibly busy. We kind of need to be really good critical consumers of research and good critical consumers of products that are out there. It's amazing how many are developed and put on the market and then they're researched. Go figure.
Correct.
But the other thing is, I was thinking when we were talking about aversion to particular kinds of sensory stimulation, and reacting to that, I do a lot of acceptance and commitment therapy in my mental health practice. And I work with people who have thoughts or feelings that create problems for them sometimes. I don't know if I've ever seen this applied to other sensory experiences, because the thought is sensory, the feeling is sensory. That might be interesting to see that. Terry, we got to work on that together.
We
That's
do.
cool.
Hey,
Yeah.
I think that's a future collaboration right
Yeah.
there. But I wanted to just mention, because so I have a heart very much for teachers. And one of the areas that we had difficulty in is the school that was sending us kindergartners. In that preschool setting, everybody did have headphones. Everybody had like all of these things. And so teachers inherit IEPs that have all that in.
Yes.
They inherit students that behavior was shaped.
Yep.
And so we also have to understand, and I think Ted would agree, so if we get that, and then we really get to know our students, then we have to figure out how to prove that they don't need it. So when we write the next IEP, it's not in.
Or
And that was,
maybe
unless they needed it.
Yeah. Just assess. Maybe they need it, maybe they don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Terry,
And-
here's a
And that's just been one of the things. I had an opportunity to consult with that group, and we're getting this whole group, and nobody has headphones in their IEPs.
Awesome.
They realized it. You know what I mean? And again, people were oppositional, but it was just because they didn't want to not have something that a child needed.
Well,
so if they
sure.
go down the path, and it's just remarkable to see, you know.
So here's my question then for you, because I do see that there's some teachers out there that are watching this right now. They're probably wondering, okay, I hear you guys are saying data. We need data. We need data. We get into it's fall. Let's say the best scenario, we get to go back into the classroom as scheduled. We're going to be positive. And in their IEPs, there are these sensory things. Like you said, it's an inherited IEP. How do they start with the data? What data do we suggest them?
Whatever their IEP goals are. Yeah. How about take some baseline data on all their IEP goals?
And I think what I like that you just said is that if there is an accommodation for some sort of sensory tool, does that mean that there needs to be a goal related to it?
No.
Okay.
Well, because, and I don't know, this is probably a topic for another day. But during this COVID thing, I got to partner with a brand new BCBA, and I have a new friend now. But she and I poured through the literature. I think we looked at probably 150 articles, ended up settling on 88. They were all scholarly articles. There just was no scholarly evidence that the sensory piece worked. Like, we couldn't find it. There was so much evidence about antecedent-based sensory interventions. And so I guess that's the part where we've been starting to write that in some of the IEPs, that if data shows, like it can be used in the antecedent phase in order to help the child meet the target behavior. And there's continually, you guys all take data all the time. So you have data continually. And then there might need to be a change, because, sometimes they respond, and then you go, well, we need to switch up what it is.
Right. The whole point of data is to use it to change something.
Exactly. Katie, I love you.
Or to see what's there, because, our impressions, we tend to overestimate the infrequent things and underestimate the frequent things, to see what's there. But when it comes to data, what I like is doing just enough to answer the question that's being asked, but also that fits in with everything else the person collecting the data has to do. So it may not, it's not going to be publication worthy 99% of the time.
Right.
It's gonna answer the question, and that's
right.
Well, so I just think of, like work samples. Like if they're saying like, oh, the kid needs, a standing desk, or they need a hokey stool or anything like that. We have work samples produced with those items, and then we have work samples where they weren't produced with those items, and then we do a comparison, and we're just like, no, there's absolutely no difference. Like, or maybe there is significant difference, and it's proving that it is necessary.
Right. And just don't let the student out of that equation, because I did that once. And well, it was interesting because, and then I brought both samples to the student and we looked at them. And so he told me, but this topic was about something I really liked.
Oh.
And it had nothing to
okay.
do with it's the thing I set up.
Yeah.
I know.
So
And I
it's
went,
important to think about the MO.
yes,
All
there
about the
you go.
motivation.
If it's
Yeah.
aversive or not, like, I
Yeah.
mean, if you give a kid an addition sample, addition problems on one sample in one setting, and then you do give them subtraction and they're like, well, I hate subtraction. I hate carrying over the one and whatever. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
so I'm going to
right.
scribble. Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Performance standards for fluency and addition multiplication, that's 100 to 120 correct per minute.
Mhm.
And for division and subtraction, it's 80 to 100. I think that's single
Ah,
digit.
okay.
So
Interesting.
the division
Huh.
subtraction really is harder. So you got to do equivalent work samples if that's what you're doing.
Right.
Yes. So that's important
Right,
to
it is.
remember. So I think, what time is it, you guys? Okay. So
Yeah, about
Terry, you've talked about the antecedent. Can you just give us some examples of what those antecedent interventions look like?
Well,
How does it
So-
look different than what's been done before?
well, I guess it's, and that's the part, I mean, some of it could even look the same as what you've seen OTs do before. And I think, again, so if we're looking at environment and we're looking at what teachers do anyway, you know what I mean? And using that to help, first of all, that the student needs to understand the expected behavior. So if we need them to keep their hands and feet to themselves in circle time, and most people are sitting on a different letter that's on the carpet, and they may need a carpet square to sit on.
Mhm.
So really the in-between thing is that carpet square. So they can hold the sides, they can even rock back and forth, and it gives them more of a boundary. But then what we would do is start to fade that away. So they learn it, they show it, and then they may have it for, the first, I don't know if it's a 15-minute circle time for 10 minutes, the last 5, we let them know they can do that. And you guys know that whole, non-contingent reinforcement piece and all of that. Like those things, it was amazing to me to see all that work. And it isn't the object alone. And so this is my new soapbox, is even if it's a sensory strategy or an object, that still doesn't have the value. It is how it's used.
right.
You know what I mean? And how it's communicated not only to the student, but to, the teachers, so that we all understand it. Because sometimes teachers just don't understand. Or I love to talk to teachers and go, so what's your idea? What do you have in the classroom already? Why do I have to bring something new in? Because they'll go, I got carpet squares, or hey, I got this little thing, looks like a flower, and she is so girly. And I go, yes, we're gonna sit on the flower and she's gonna bloom. And honestly, and I just stand there and go, well, this has nothing to do about me except I'm having a conversation with a teacher. They were all her ideas, not mine.
And anyone who would object to that hasn't been to the supermarket during the last 3 months. There are circles or squares on the floor by all the cash registers.
There wasn't something cool enough in the circle. Just kidding.
Yeah. And I mean, so I guess to me, the sensory thing is big. It's pervasive, just again, like Ted said, it's all around us in our environments. I know some teachers turn out lights now during class because there's the one student that has an aversion to light. And again, used to, feel like that student should have ruled the world. But I listened to all you guys going, the lights are not going to be out in Walmart.
Right.
And you know what? We're going to have to go to Walmart. So if it needs to be out for the first 5 minutes because they've just come off the bus, which is a very disorganizing place, if we need to have it off for 5 minutes and we know that that's a time for their sensory system just to kind of calm down, then we do that. And that's kind. You know what I mean? I go sometimes and sit in a quiet room, in a dark room, and then I leave and go do my work. Or I sit on my deck in my new hammock, you know what I mean? And swing really slowly. So we do that, but then it's to get up and do work. So it's, and that may be something that child needs the rest of their life too. Sometimes it's helpful to help them understand. I have a colleague who's 31 who had all kinds of sensory defensiveness. And if she has to do a special presentation and wear certain clothes because it's what's expected, she will literally count to 500. And I was, we had a great conversation. She goes, this never goes away. I've learned how to deal with it, but my whole body is screaming. And I know I just have to do it for an hour and a half. And then these clothes go off. I put my sweats on and you know what I mean? But so the sensory part can be real, and maybe we can't even make all of it go away, but we got to find a way to be functional.
Yeah.
Even if it's counting to 500, so you can get in your car and drive away.
Correct. You made a good point. So that's another really big thing, because we see on Pinterest and all these sensory things. There's vests, and there's blankets, and there's cute corners, and I had the beanbag, and that disappeared really quick. And you know,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Real
I
fast.
think I brought it in. So
no,
sorry.
I had no idea, but it was, dude, we learned so much about
We
it
did.
though. And the vest, especially with you too. We successfully faded a vest out, and it was beautiful.
Right.
But I think a super just important piece in this is to understand that sensory objects like the vest or the hokey stools or the whatever it is, it's to increase or decrease the target behavior. It is not just for input. It is not just because well, maybe they have autism, so they need blah blah blah.
Right.
It needs to be intentional, because we're trying to give them functional ways to live and independence, and it's so important to it has a focus and a reason, and you're taking
Clap
data.
emojis
No.
everywhere.
Yes.
One thing, and the old DSM-4, which I loved because it had the multi-axial diagnostic system.
I
was
agree.
good at that. I hate
Yeah.
5 because that went away.
Hate
But
5.
if you look at the diagnostic criteria for autism back then, if you do the math, there's like 5,492 different presentations
Right.
that can
Yeah.
result in a diagnosis of autism. The number's not correct, but it's between like 5,400 and 6,000.
It's a lot.
The number is. But, so this one size fits all, just based on hearing that term, doesn't quite work. You got to meet the person. But the other thing is, I wonder if there's value in thinking about sensory defensiveness as not something the person has, but something the person does.
It's
Because
true.
I'm sensory defensive. I really don't like Adele. I can't stand the sound of Adele.
You are
But I
kidding
am
me.
not cringing.
We're all like, what?
From Adele, right? I'm okay.
You're
with
wrong.
Adele. I'm
It's okay.
about Adele. But if Adele comes on the radio, my arm does this.
Right.
So, I think it's something we all have.
Yeah, if it's cold, we put a coat on,
It's
right?
something we all
Right.
do. And we call it a problem when someone else is doing it to something, and the presence is something that doesn't get most of us to do it. And when it kind of maybe limits that person's life or doesn't, sometimes it's, I'm okay with personal choice too. If you don't like it, you don't have to like it. And if it's not going to limit your life, or if it is and you're okay with it, not my problem,
So I guess when you guys mentioned, parents just have a ton of resources, aka Google can just give them all these lists of resources. And I typed it up. That's why I was being so rude on my phone and looking at it.
Oh,
And there's just a ridiculous amount of pages
yes.
related to sensory processing disorders, sensory processing for parents, frequently asked questions, sensational kits,
Right.
all of this stuff. Like what resources can parents reach out to for guidance and not just the quick fix info? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ted.
Ted
Ted?
has an idea
What
about a
does
book.
Ted have?
Yeah.
And show your book again.
Actually, there are a couple good websites. Quackwatch.com,
Quackwatch.com. Okay.
and autism-watch.org.
Oh, I don't know that.
Really cool website.
And we'll put those in the comments
Oh,
in a
good.
second.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I
can
need
add
that.
Yeah, but and some people, I've shared them with some people and say, well, they're just mean. We don't like it when we're well-intentioned and we've educated ourselves and we've learned a bunch of things, and it turns out that what we've learned might not be what we've learned it was. We don't like when
Exactly
that
right.
happens, and I can understand that just mean, and I can understand that reaction. I get it. And parents and teachers aren't learning all this stuff and doing all this stuff because they want to do awful things to their children.
Exactly.
and students.
Right.
They're doing it to help,
Mhm.
and so, but those are a couple good places. I wish I knew of some more places that people could go to where someone's not going to say, that's just mean, but I don't.
Yeah. Well, and what do you think, Ted? Because
ASATonline.org. Autism, what is it?
ASAT.
ASATonline.org. Let me go there on this computer.
Online.org.
Oh my gosh, Katie, we were like together.
Good.
that was like a choral response. I love it.
No, that's Association for
We missed school.
Association for Science and Autism Treatment.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
they have
put
a
that up
whole
too.
section just for parents and teachers.
Cool.
That's wonderful.
I think that's just something like, we have teachers out there and we have parents
You're
out
right.
there. And I think it's just important that just because you see a label, just because you see sensory processing disorder, have it all explained, like it may not be evidence-based. And so it's
Right.
important,
That's
like
a great point.
when you're looking at things online, it's just important to make sure, like, who's providing this information? Like, is it from someone who, and Terry and I kind of have experience with this.
Mhm.
It could be someone who is just talking to other teachers via Facebook
Right.
and then typing it up. They have no education background.
Right.
They're just typing it up and putting it out there, and it's labeled
Right.
as educational. And it's
And again, the narrative is that autism and sensory are synonymous, and it is
Right.
not
Yes.
true. And again, and that for a while, or actually, when they were developing the DSM-5, the sensory people tried so hard to have enough evidence so that sensory processing disorder would be its own category. It is not there. So
Wow.
then again, and there was so much push and money, and now since that was a no, I see it funneled all back to parents again. You know what I mean? And they still believe in it. And again, they're not wanting to harm anyone,
Yeah.
but they don't really have what they need. And parents, and this is not anything critical, a parent is going to do anything they can to help their child. They will leave no stone unturned, and they should not. And so I think sometimes, and I love those websites, but if we could develop a group, even here in this area, to go, we're a resource for people to have a live body and a voice to talk to, because parents need voices.
Sure.
You
And
know
I
what I mean?
think
They're
that's
inundated with facts, and it's
Yeah.
overwhelming. And I mean, literally during COVID, a parent called and go, just tell me what to do. I will do whatever you say. I just need someone to tell me. You know,
I
my
had a-
heart was breaking.
Yeah, I had a parent in my classroom who, I mean, she was so organized. She actually had binders of like information and on separate like subjects, like sensory. I mean, she had entire binders of information. Like she is a sponge. She is open, and I think it's so important. The internet's a great resource, but again, sifting through it's really stressful. And so seek out your child's OT at the school, like Terry, ask us, ask anyone you have access to who is a professional and that has worked in education.
We've done it with each other. Like I've seen things like
Absolutely.
on Facebook during this whole COVID-19.
Like, is this real?
And I'll send it to Tara and I'm like, what are your thoughts? And she's like, no. And I was like,
Yeah,
our group, my thinking was, I just wasn't sure,
I lost my mind.
Our group chats are filled with like, have you seen this article? How do you feel? Yeah, it's important. What?
And skincare tips.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, that's a whole other webcast.
So I think I was looking at the questions, and I'm not seeing any questions, which is good because that means that people are listening, or they're just they're gonna watch it later. I think we're gonna still carry on this conversation next
on Thursday,
which I hope everyone here will be there. But we're also gonna have Lauren come in to bring in a little speech piece.
Yes,
and we're gonna talk about Chewies.
Yeah, we all have very strong opinions on Chewies and sensory rooms. Yep. And see a child in a sensory room with a Chewy, and you're like, okay.
Yep. So this was the introduction. To the
I'm so excited. Sensory.
We have a lot of opinions, and it'll be really nice too.
Well, that was what our research focus was, or to look through the research.
Right.
So that's good. I'm going to review all that before Thursday.
Yeah, and if you want, you can also just send us an email of some of the resources you mentioned, and we'd be happy to put it in the comments. So
in the comment for this one, guys, we will put those websites that Ted talked about in the comments, and feel free to ask us any more questions as they arise, and we'll be here on Thursday as well.
Yep.
All right. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Send us a picture of Cooper.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, he'll be here Thursday.
Okay. He'll make his debut.
Perfect.
Today had bagel.
Oh. Very cute.
All right.
As they do.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, guys.